It's a really good idea not to mess around with anybody in the band. You know, that there's a scene.
Picture the scene. Los Angeles, 1979. The Troubadour, a legendary West Hollywood venue, is alive with electricity, the clatter of glass, the moan of guitar feedback, the hum of roadies running last-minute checks. Iconic faces pass one another in hushed hallways as anticipation fills the air. But suddenly, tension slices through the buzz. A panicked assistant barrels into the promoter's office, eyes wide, nerves frayed. "She's gone," he stammers. "Linda just stormed out." No confrontation, no explanation, just her name, gone from the lineup in seconds. It wasn't a logistical mix-up. It wasn't a diva moment. It was something, or someone, that triggered an exit so sharp it echoed for years. On the list of performers, Linda Ronstadt spotted a single name and walked away in silence. And for decades, she never spoke a word about what or who made her leave. No interviews, no articles, just an image of poise, perfection, and polished answers. Until now. At 78, the voice that enchanted millions is breaking decades of silence. Linda Ronstadt is finally naming names, 7 to be exact. 7 men whose actions etched permanent scars. They weren't petty squabbles. These weren't just bruised egos. These were betrayals that shaped her story and shook the pillars of rock history. And the revelations, they're not what you'd expect. Because some of these men weren't strangers. They were collaborators, friends, even family. Before the Eagles became the soundtrack of a generation, before they conquered arenas and claimed their place in rock legend, they were just a band trying to be heard. And one of their earliest champions? Linda Ronstadt, betrayed by a beat, Don Henley. In the early 70s, Don Henley was just a backup singer and drummer, tucked behind Linda's powerful presence on stage. She gave him his shot. She brought him on tour. She believed in his talent. But as the Eagles rose, so did Henley's ego. The once humble musician began to act like he owned the canyon. The band that once opened for her now strutted like kings through Sunset Boulevard. And when success came, so did arrogance. In 1975, backstage at the Universal Amphitheater, things came to a head. Henley, high on acclaim, threw a verbal jab that landed like a slap. He told Linda she should stick to singing covers and let real songwriters do the talking. It wasn't just an insult. It was an erasure of everything she'd built. Her artistry, her instinct, her grit. She didn't argue. She revoked his credentials. Effective immediately, Don Henley was out. Word spread. The whispers got louder. Tales of his ego, fueled by fame and substances, became common knowledge. For Linda, it wasn't just about one night. It was about respect. A respect she gave freely, but was never returned. In her circle, she would later describe Henley as a man who traded his integrity for stardom. And he wasn't the only one who forgot who helped him rise. A kiss that wasn't. Jim Morrison's humiliation. Summer, 1968. The flower power haze had begun to thin, and the music world was caught in a wild, unpredictable shift. Linda Ronstadt was navigating an industry built to sideline women. The Doors were setting stages ablaze with their hypnotic energy. At a private party not far from whiskey, a go-go, the music never stopped. But something else did. Respect. Jim Morrison, already intoxicated, spotted Linda and pulled her into a scene she never asked for. No warning, no permission. Mid-performance, he dragged her onto the stage like she was part of the act. And then he leaned in to kiss her. Linda, stunned and startled, turned away. Morrison, unbalanced, crashed into her mic stand, nearly toppling the whole setup. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or gasp. What followed wasn't regret. Months later, Morrison mocked her on the radio, calling her sweet but spineless. Linda said nothing publicly, but her private comments were unforgettable. To her, Morrison was a brilliant disaster who embodied the toxic entitlement that plagued rock culture. His recklessness had crossed a line, and she never forgot the sting. Protest turned personal. Neil Young's hypocrisy. The year was 1976. A benefit concert for farm workers brought together a constellation of music's most passionate voices. Among them were two giants, Linda Ronstadt and Neil Young, both outspoken, both committed, both respected. On the surface, they stood united, but beneath the surface, a storm brewed. Backstage, Neil dismissed Linda's set suggestions. He belittled her input, criticized her sound, and vetoed her performance choices. And then, after the concert, he told the press she wasn't built for protest. It was a blow that hit harder than a bad review. It questioned her soul, her values, her voice. Linda left the venue in tears. She had believed they were equals in cause and creativity. Instead, she was reduced to a symbol of sellout commercialism by someone she admired. She never performed with Neil again. Privately, she described him as loud in purpose, cruel in action. His activism to her felt tainted when paired with arrogance. This wasn't just disagreement. It was betrayal, and it stung deeper than any critic's review. When genius turns cruel. Frank Zappa. Their 1974 meeting sparked excitement across the industry. Frank Zappa, the unpredictable maestro of avant-garde rock. Linda Ronstadt, a vocal powerhouse on the rise. Their collaboration promised magic. Instead, it imploded. Zappa dismissed her suggestions, laughed off her input, accused her of sanitizing his sound. Then, during a full studio session in front of a crowded room, he stopped the music and sneered, "This is what happens when you hand real music to a pop singer." The room fell silent. Linda didn't retaliate. She packed her things, held her head high, and walked out, never to return. She never said a word publicly, but in private she called him brilliant but brutal, a mind worth admiring, but a man she could never trust again. That day, the possibility of something revolutionary vanished under the weight of ego and cruelty. The Canyon cracks, David Crosby's betrayal. Laurel Canyon wasn't just a place. It was a movement, a moment in time where creativity bloomed, where music spilled from every house, and where legends shared more than melodies. They shared dreams. Linda Ronstadt and David Crosby were part of that revolution, kindred spirits, co-creators of a sound that defied genres. They weren't just collaborators. They were family, until they weren't. It was 1978. During a recording session for a joint project, Linda requested a key change, something simple to better suit her vocal range, but Crosby shut her down. "You should learn to adapt," he said with a wave of indifference. It might have ended there, a minor disagreement between friends. But the tension spiraled. Heated words flew, and soon the spat spilled from the studio into the headlines. And then Crosby took it further. In a Rolling Stone interview, he labeled Linda manufactured, a product of marketing, not talent. For someone who'd carved her path with grit and raw skill, it was a dagger. She didn't respond publicly. That wasn't her way. Instead, she erased him from her world. His name was banned from conversations around her. His music vanished from her tour sets. To Linda, Crosby hadn't just wounded her. He'd shattered the very ideals Laurel Canyon stood for: collaboration, authenticity, mutual respect. Privately, she warned others about him. She called him a cautionary tale, proof that even the purest artistry can be corrupted by ego, addiction, and ambition. Punk Poison, Elvis Costello's public jab. Cleveland, 1979. The air was electric with anticipation. Linda Ronstadt stood at the pinnacle of her career, a headliner riding high on multiple chart toppers. Her voice had become synonymous with versatility, power, and emotion. But not everyone in the crowd admired her success. Among the audience that night stood Elvis Costello, rising punk star, lyrical firestarter, and provocateur-in-chief. After the show, in front of a pack of reporters, he didn't offer praise. He fired a shot. "She sounds like background music for brunch," he sneered. The insults spread like wildfire. Linda, never one to lash out, sought a private conversation. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he didn't mean it. Backstage, she asked him, directly. Costello, visibly drunk and audibly arrogant, looked her in the eye and doubled down. Another insult. No apology, just a smirk and a walk-off. Linda never spoke to him again. To her, Costello wasn't just cruel. He was emblematic of a new breed of artist. Clever, but cold. Sharp, but soulless. His rebellion in her eyes lacked heart. She later confided to friends, he wasn't fighting the system. He was fighting kindness. The duet that died. Paul Simon's Cold Control. It was 1982. The idea of Linda Ronstadt teaming up with Paul Simon had fans and industry insiders buzzing. On paper, it was perfection. Two legendary voices, both genre-defying, both respected, both capable of creating something timeless. But inside the studio, it was anything but harmonious. From the first session, the atmosphere was tense. Simon nitpicked every phrase, stopped takes mid-line, altered lyrics without asking. His suggestions felt more like critiques disguised as guidance. To Linda, it felt like being micromanaged by a stern teacher. Each note she sang was dissected, questioned, diminished. The chemistry? Non-existent. The song? Shelved, unfinished, left to collect dust in a studio archive. There was no explosion, no screaming match. Just a slow, steady erosion of mutual respect. Linda never returned, and she never worked with Paul Simon again. To her, that experience wasn't about one failed duet. It was about being devalued in a space where she should have been celebrated. He didn't need a partner, she told a confidant years later. He wanted a puppet. For years, Linda Ronstadt carried these wounds quietly. No tell-all books, no revenge interviews, no viral tweets, just grace. She let the music speak for her. Her voice became a sanctuary, even when her memories were stormy.